Look up at the night sky in any remote corner of Latin America. The stars stretch endlessly above ancient mountains and vast plains that have witnessed civilizations rise and fall. There's something humbling about standing beneath that cosmic canopy, feeling small against the universe's immensity. We tell ourselves we're alone, that Earth is our sanctuary in an empty void. But what if we're wrong? What if something out there has been watching us all along, studying us with an intelligence we can barely comprehend? The beautiful isolation of rural landscapes becomes something else entirely when you consider you might not be alone. When the familiar becomes alien, when the sky itself becomes a source of terror rather than wonder, we're forced to confront a disturbing possibility. Perhaps we've never been the observers. Perhaps we've always been the observed. And sometimes, observation isn't enough for them. In October of 1957, a young Brazilian farmer named Antonio Vilas Boas was working his family's fields in the rural state of Minas Gerais. He was 23 years old, healthy, and by all accounts, a practical man with no interest in fantasy or science fiction. The region where he lived was isolated, hours from any major city, a place where the night sky remained unpolluted by urban lights. It was the kind of place where you could see every star, where the Milky Way stretched like a river of light overhead. On the night of October 15th, Antonio was plowing his fields alone, working late to take advantage of cooler temperatures. His tractor's headlights cut through the darkness as he made his way across the familiar terrain. He'd done this hundreds of times before, but this night would be different. This night would change everything he thought he knew about the universe and our place in it. What happened to Antonio Vilas Boas in that field has been debated for decades. Was it a hoax? A hallucination? Or was it something far more disturbing? Evidence that we're not alone and that contact with other intelligences might not be the peaceful encounter we've imagined. The story that emerged from that October night would become one of the most detailed and disturbing abduction accounts ever recorded, examined by doctors, investigated by researchers, and studied by scientists trying to understand what really happened. The physical evidence was undeniable. The psychological trauma was real, but the implications were almost too terrifying to accept. Because if what Antonio claimed was true, then the question isn't whether we're alone in the universe. The question is what they want from us, and why they keep coming back. I'm Miguel Rodi. Stay with us to witness this story in Latin Paranormal Archives. According to Antonio's account, as he worked his field that night, he noticed a bright red light in the sky. At first he thought it might be a star, but it was moving, descending toward his location. The light grew larger and brighter until it illuminated the entire field with an eerie crimson glow. Antonio's tractor engine suddenly died. The lights went out. He tried to restart it, but nothing worked. Then the object landed. Antonio described it as egg-shaped, metallic, with a rotating dome on top that emitted that strange red light. He estimated it was about 35 feet long. 3 legs extended from the bottom, stabilizing it on the uneven ground. He tried to run, but he didn't get far. Several beings emerged from the craft. They were small, about 5 feet tall, wearing tight-fitting gray suits and helmets. Their eyes were small and blue, their faces otherwise unremarkable, except for their size and the strange sounds they made. A series of barks and yelps that bore no resemblance to any human language. They grabbed Antonio. He fought back, but there were too many of them, and despite their size, they were surprisingly strong. They dragged him toward the craft, up a ramp, and inside. The interior was brightly lit, filled with strange equipment and symbols he couldn't read. What happened next would become one of the most controversial aspects of his story, an account so bizarre that many dismissed it immediately, while others saw it as evidence of something profoundly disturbing about the nature of alien contact. The medical examination Antonio underwent after his experience would provide physical evidence that something traumatic had indeed occurred, but his case wasn't unique. Across Latin America, other individuals would come forward with similar stories, each adding pieces to a disturbing puzzle that suggested a pattern, a purpose behind these encounters that went beyond simple observation. In October 1973, 16 years after Antonio's experience, a truck driver named Dionisio Llanca was traveling along Route 3 in Argentina, near Bahía Blanca, in the Patagonia region. It was around 1 in the morning when his truck suffered a flat tire. He pulled over to the side of the desolate highway, surrounded by nothing but empty plains stretching to the horizon. As he worked to change the tire, he noticed lights approaching, but they weren't coming from the road. They were descending from the sky. Dionisio described a dome-shaped object, yellowish in color, that landed about 300 feet from his truck. 3 beings emerged. Unlike Antonio's captors, these were described as taller, more humanoid in appearance, with elongated heads and large dark eyes. They wore one-piece suits that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Dionisio tried to run to his truck, but a beam of light struck him, and he felt paralyzed, unable to move or cry out. The beings approached and took him aboard their craft. Inside, he was subjected to what he described as a medical examination. They took blood samples from his finger, examined his body with strange instruments, and communicated with him through a form of telepathy. When they released him, he found himself back on the highway, but something was wrong. His truck was now several miles from where he'd stopped. Hours had passed, though to him it felt like only minutes. And when he looked down at his arm, he saw something that would provide investigators with tangible evidence. A strange triangular mark, like a burn, that hadn't been there before. These physical marks, these missing hours, these detailed accounts from credible witnesses, they all pointed to something real happening. But what? The problem with abduction accounts is that they're almost impossible to verify objectively. We have the testimony of the witnesses, often credible people with no history of mental illness or attention-seeking behavior. We have physical evidence, scars, burns, radiation exposure, missing time documented by multiple witnesses. But we don't have proof in the scientific sense. No alien artifacts, no clear photographs, no bodies. This led to fierce debates within the research community. Some investigators, like Dr. Olavo Fontes, who examined Antonio Villas Boas in 1958, believed the physical symptoms were real. Antonio suffered from radiation sickness, nausea, lesions on his skin, symptoms consistent with exposure to high levels of radiation. Dr. Fontes documented everything meticulously at Creasy Hospital in Rio de Janeiro. The medical records were real, the symptoms were real. But did that prove aliens were responsible? Skeptics offered alternative explanations. Perhaps Antonio had been exposed to radiation from some terrestrial source. Perhaps the psychological trauma created false memories. Perhaps these were elaborate hoaxes. Though the question remained, why would someone subject themselves to such scrutiny, such ridicule, for a story that brought them nothing but trouble? Dionisio Llanca lost his job after coming forward. Antonio Villas Boas was mocked in the press. These weren't people seeking fame or fortune. They were ordinary individuals whose lives were forever changed by something they couldn't fully explain. But perhaps the most compelling evidence came not from a single dramatic encounter, but from repeated contact over many years. Because some individuals claimed the visitors returned again and again, suggesting these weren't random events, but part of something larger, something purposeful. In the early 1980s, a photographer named Carlos Diaz began experiencing repeated encounters near Ajusco Park, just outside Mexico City in the Tepoztlán region. Unlike the terrifying abductions reported by Antonio and Dionisio, Carlos described his experiences as more communicative, almost collaborative. The beings he encountered, he claimed, were trying to share information about environmental destruction and humanity's impact on the planet. Over 13 years, from 1981 to 1994, Carlos documented his experiences with photographs and video footage. Some of this material was analyzed by researchers, including UFO investigator Klaus Dona, who found no evidence of tampering or manipulation. The images showed luminous objects, strange craft hovering over the volcanic landscape, sometimes close enough to see details of their construction. But here's where it gets interesting from a scientific perspective. Carlos wasn't just a witness. He claimed to have been taken aboard these craft multiple times, shown images of Earth from space, given warnings about ecological collapse. The beings, he said, were concerned about humanity's trajectory. Whether you believe his account or not, it raises profound questions. If these encounters are real, what do they tell us about the visitors' intentions? Are they scientists studying us? Are they concerned observers? Or is there something darker at play, something we're not equipped to understand? Harvard psychiatrist John Mack spent years studying abduction cases, interviewing hundreds of witnesses. He concluded that something real was happening, even if we couldn't explain it within our current scientific framework. The experiences were too consistent, too detailed, too traumatic to dismiss as simple fantasy. But consistency in testimony doesn't necessarily mean the interpretation is correct. What if these experiences were real, but not in the way the witnesses believed? What if something else was happening? Something that challenged our understanding of consciousness, reality, and the nature of human experience itself. The strangest aspect of Latin American abduction cases is the detail. These aren't vague memories or dreamlike recollections. They're specific, vivid, often accompanied by physical evidence that's difficult to explain away. Antonio Villas Boas described the interior of the craft in meticulous detail. The symbols on the walls, the equipment, the layout of the rooms. Under hypnosis years later, he provided the same descriptions, never wavering, never contradicting himself. Dionisio Llanca's triangular mark was photographed, examined by doctors, and remained visible for months after his encounter. The mark showed characteristics of a burn, but the pattern was too precise, too geometric to be accidental. And Carlos Diaz's photographs, whatever you make of them, show objects that don't behave like conventional aircraft. They hover without visible means of propulsion. They emit light in ways that don't match any known technology from the 1980s and 90s. But perhaps the most unsettling detail comes from the consistency across cases. Witnesses who've never met, separated by decades and thousands of miles, describe similar beings, similar procedures, similar craft. They describe the same sense of paralysis, the same missing time, the same physical after effects. It's as if they're all describing the same phenomenon, encountering the same visitors, participating in the same incomprehensible program. And if that's true, then the question becomes, what is the program? What are they doing? And most terrifyingly, are they finished with us? Or is this just the beginning? The answer to that question might lie in the most recent reports, because the encounters haven't stopped. They continue to this day, in remote regions of Latin America and around the world, suggesting that whatever is happening, it's ongoing, persistent, and perhaps accelerating. In recent years, governments have begun acknowledging what researchers have known for decades. The phenomenon is real. The U.S. Navy released footage of unidentified aerial phenomena. The Pentagon established official programs to investigate encounters. But Latin America has always been ahead of the curve on this issue. Countries like Brazil, Chile, and Argentina have maintained official UFO investigation programs for decades, collecting thousands of reports, many involving close encounters and abductions. The pattern that emerges from these official files is disturbing. The encounters aren't random. They cluster around certain geographic areas, remote regions with low population density, places where someone can be taken without witnesses, where strange lights in the sky go unreported because there's no one around to see them. The victims, if we can call them that, often share certain characteristics. They're alone, isolated, vulnerable. They're taken at night, returned hours later with fragmented memories and physical evidence of their ordeal. And they're changed. Many report lasting psychological effects, nightmares, anxiety, a persistent feeling of being watched. Some develop unusual abilities, heightened intuition, sensitivity to electromagnetic fields. Others suffer from chronic health problems, unexplained illnesses that doctors can't diagnose or treat. The question that haunts researchers is simple but profound. If these beings have the technology to travel between stars, to paralyze humans, to erase memories, why are they so interested in us? What could they possibly learn from examining rural farmers, truck drivers, and photographers? Unless, of course, they're not learning. Unless they're doing something else entirely, something we can't comprehend, because we lack the framework to understand their true purpose. 3 cases, 3 countries. 3 individuals whose lives were forever altered by encounters with something beyond our understanding. Antonio Villas Boas, the farmer who was taken from his field and subjected to experiences so bizarre they challenged belief. Dionisio Llanca, the truck driver who lost hours of his life and gained a mysterious mark that defied explanation. Carlos Diaz, the photographer who claimed repeated contact and brought back images that continued to puzzle researchers decades later. What connects these cases isn't just the abduction narrative. It's the aftermath, the physical evidence, the consistency of detail, the profound impact on the witnesses' lives. These weren't people seeking attention. They were ordinary individuals thrust into extraordinary circumstances, forced to confront a reality that most of us can safely ignore. The medical evidence is real. The psychological trauma is documented. The photographs exist. The question isn't whether something happened to these people. The question is, what happened, and why? Were they victims of alien experimentation, participants in some vast cosmic study, or were they experiencing something else entirely? Something that challenges our understanding of consciousness, reality, and the nature of existence itself. We may never know the full truth, but the encounters continue, the evidence accumulates, and the mystery deepens with each passing year. The abduction phenomenon forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about our place in the universe. We like to think we're in control, that we understand the world around us, that we're the dominant intelligence on this planet. But what if we're not? What if we're being studied, observed, perhaps even manipulated by intelligences far beyond our comprehension? The implications are staggering. If these encounters are real, then we're not alone. We've never been alone, and the visitors, whoever or whatever they are, have been here for a long time, operating with impunity, taking people from their homes, their cars, their fields, conducting their examinations, and returning them with fragmented memories and lasting scars. Some researchers believe the abduction phenomenon represents first contact, not the peaceful meeting of civilizations we've imagined, but something far more complex and troubling. Others think it's evidence of something darker, a cosmic horror that we're not equipped to understand or resist. But perhaps the most disturbing possibility is that the abductions serve a purpose we couldn't even conceive of, that we re participants in something so far beyond our understanding that we can only perceive the smallest fragments, like ants trying to comprehend the intentions of the humans studying their colony. The truth, whatever it is, remains elusive, hidden behind missing time and fragmented memories, protected by the sheer impossibility of proving something that defies every law of physics and logic we hold dear. Stick around, because there's one more detail worth considering. In 2005, a Brazilian military pilot reported an encounter while flying over the Amazon rainforest. His instruments went haywire, his radio died, and then he saw it. A massive triangular craft, silent, hovering just above the canopy. It paced his aircraft for several minutes before accelerating away at impossible speed. The pilot filed an official report. The Brazilian Air Force investigated. They found radar data confirming an unidentified object in the area at the exact time of the encounter, but they couldn't explain what it was or where it came from. The pilot was a decorated officer with 20 years of service. No history of mental illness, no reason to fabricate such a story. Yet there it was. Another piece of the puzzle. Another encounter that defied explanation. The abduction phenomenon isn't going away. If anything, it's accelerating. With more reports, more evidence, more witnesses coming forward every year. And each new case adds to the mystery, deepening the questions we can't answer, forcing us to confront the possibility that we're not the masters of our own fate, that we're being watched, studied, perhaps even harvested by something we can barely comprehend. The night sky isn't empty. It never was. And the visitors, whoever they are, aren't finished with us yet. Sometimes the most terrifying truth is the one we can't prove but can't deny. And sometimes, the universe is far stranger and more dangerous than we ever dared imagine.